I earn £156,000 a year, but if you check my bank account right now, £792. Before you think I am terrible with money, this is actually completely intentional. It's part of a budgeting system that I use to turn my income into £1 million net worth before AI takes my job. I've been posting my monthly payday routine as videos on those short form apps, and people have a lot of questions. Why am I renting? Why don't I put more or less into my pension? Where do I invest and what do I invest in? How do I split expenses with my partner? Why do I live such a sad, pathetic life where I budget every single pound? Plus, a lot of people just telling me that I'm doing it completely wrong. So I thought for my first ever long form video, I would run you through my March paycheck and how I'm allocating all of that money. I'm going to be sharing the system that I've used since I earned way less money that will turn my 9-to-5 income into £1 million net worth. But first, probably my most frequently asked question is, why am I even budgeting on this salary? The truth is that I would probably be budgeting my salary even if I earned £1 million a year, because I've been doing it this way for years and it's kind of become a habit. But I started budgeting my salary each month because I want to invest as much money as possible so I can retire early and live off the investments. I follow the rule of pay yourself first, where I figure out how much money I need to spend each month and then invest the rest as soon as I get paid. So if you want to get better at managing your money, or if like me, you're just really nosy, keep watching. Okay, let's review my paycheck and talk about the deductions. My gross pay is £13,000 per month, but this is not what ends up in my bank account because there are deductions. Firstly, there's my pension. In the UK, you can do what's called salary sacrificing up to £60,000 per year into your pension, so you don't pay tax on any of this money that goes into your pension pot. This means that overall you pay less tax, but the downside is that you can't access this money until you turn at least 57, so it's a trade-off. On the other end of the spectrum, the minimum amount that you can put into your pension each year is 5% of your salary. Assuming that you're salary sacrificing in both of these scenarios, let's compare the minimum and maximum pension contributions for my salary. In scenario A, where I sacrifice just 5%, I would take home £7,527, pay £4,822 into tax and national insurance, and put £650 into my pension. In scenario B, where I'm sacrificing the maximum £60,000 per year, which would mean putting in 38% of my salary, each month I would take home £5,519, pay £2,479 of tax and national insurance, and put £5,000 into my pension. As you can see, there is a massive difference in the amount of tax that you pay between scenario A and scenario B, and you're basically paying that tax to be able to access the cash now, rather than, in my case, as a 33-year-old, in 24 years. The choice that I've made up until this point has been somewhere in the middle. I've chosen to salary sacrifice 20% of my income into my pension, meaning that I put in there £2,600 each month. I landed on this 20% figure because with my take-home pay at this level, I can comfortably max out my ISA each year, we'll get to that in a second, plus have cash to build an emergency fund and live a pretty nice lifestyle while still putting money aside for the future. I also moved to the UK about a year ago, so having cash available to set myself up here has been really helpful. I have actually just changed my contributions to 10%, which will be reflected from my next paycheck because my partner and I have decided to settle in London for the medium to long term. This means that I want to have more cash available to put towards a house deposit. I do have investments and an investment property in Australia, but I want to keep that money separate for tax reasons and so that I still have wealth when I go back to Australia, whenever that happens. So after taking out £2,600 for my pension, the next deductions are tax and national insurance, which I'll just collectively call tax. The amount of tax that I pay is calculated on my income after salary sacrificing into my pension, and this month will be £3,972. This means that after I salary sacrifice into my pension and pay tax, my take-home pay is £6,427. I am a huge believer in paying yourself first, so the first thing that I do once I get paid is pay future me by putting some money aside into my savings and investment accounts. If you don't know, a stocks and shares ISA is a type of account in the UK where you can contribute up to £20,000 each year, and you don't have to pay tax on any of your investment gains. When I moved to the UK, I was generally floored by this. It is such a great program that the UK government has, so you best believe that I will be maxing this out every year that I'm in the UK. I have £1,438 left in my ISA allowance this year, so this month I'll be maxing it out. I'll also be setting aside £228 so that I can put that straight into my ISA account when the allowance resets on April 6th. In terms of strategy, I use what's called the dollar cost averaging strategy, where I invest a fixed amount every single month, no matter what the market is doing. So if the market is up, I buy a little bit less, but if the market is down, I'm effectively buying at a discount. I'll put my current portfolio on the screen. As you can see, it's mostly geared towards low-cost ETFs with a bit of bonds and gold thrown in there for diversification. I'm actually planning on increasing the allocation towards bonds because I want a bit more of a conservative profile, given that I'm going to be using that money to buy a house in the next few years, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. For the platform, I use Trading 212. I like it because A, there's no transaction fees, and B, I find the interface really user-friendly. Then each month I put £240 into a crypto account and use the same dollar cost averaging strategy. So each week I buy £60 worth of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Aave, and Ripple. No matter what those other people talking about crypto investing on the internet say, you should always do your own research and be really careful before you invest into crypto. Having said that, I do think that there is room to grow in the crypto market, so I put a bit of money in there each month. I switched from Revolut to CoinJar to buy crypto because A, the fees are lower, B, I find the user interface really intuitive on CoinJar, and C, you can withdraw to a hardware wallet so that I can keep my funds safe. Onto savings. I currently have 4 sinking funds: travel, aesthetics for things like Botox and microneedling, shopping, and therapy. Since we decided to buy a house, I've decided to stop contributing to the shopping and aesthetics sinking funds, so I'll divert that money into the house fund instead. But I will be putting £333 into my travel sinking fund and £180 into my therapy sinking fund. Everything is a trade-off, and while I'm happy to stop getting Botox and buying new clothes, therapy is not something that I'm willing to give up, and we already have a few trips planned, so I'm going to keep saving for those. I do have an emergency fund with 3 months worth of expenses. I was working on building this up to 6 months worth of expenses, but instead I'm just going to divert that money to the house fund. If there's an emergency that comes up that I can't cover with this 3 months worth of expenses, like someone loses their job and we're out of work for multiple months, or God forbid, the cats get sick and we can't cover it with their pet insurance, then I will dip into the house fund to cover these emergencies. Obviously, all of this money is just sitting in different pots within my Monzo account. It doesn't really matter if it's tagged for an emergency fund or a house fund or a sinking fund, but I really like keeping this money separate so that I can see how on track I am for my various goals. This month, I'm going to be putting £500 specifically into the house fund. Any additional income that I make this month from my content side hustle will also go into, you guessed it, the house fund. Now that we paid future me, the next step is to cover necessities. Firstly, I have a £455 credit card bill to pay. I used the British Airways American Express credit card, and I only use it to earn points, and I pay it off in full every single month. I would say that credit cards are for people that have at least an intermediate level of personal finance knowledge. In my opinion, if you're just starting out on your personal finance journey, you probably shouldn't get a credit card because it puts you at risk of getting into a lot of debt, because credit cards generally have very high interest rates. But if, like me, you are comfortable with managing your money, I really like using a credit card to get airline points each month, and I've actually even done what's called credit card churning in the past, where you sign up to as many credit cards as possible to get sign-on bonuses. I've kind of stopped doing that these days because honestly, I just don't have the time, but it was really useful when I worked as a management consultant and put loads of travel expenses onto my credit card. Next, in the necessities category, I put £2,500 into my joint account with my partner, where we contribute relative to our incomes. This fund covers a lot of stuff: rent, obviously, bills like water and electricity, cat things like food and litter. It's connected to our joint Amazon account for any house expenses. We use it when we go out to dinner together, we use it for joint groceries, and we do a big Costco shop every few months where we use this account. Splitting our joint expenses relative to income works really well for us because we can live a really nice lifestyle together, but still have money to set aside for savings and investments individually, and spend on whatever we want day to day without the other person having access to all of our transactions. Once I've paid future me and covered all the necessities, we get to the want section of my budgeting system, where I have a grand total of £792 left over. When it comes to this point in my short form videos, I get a lot of comments along the lines of, you're so boring, you earn all this money, but you only have less than £1,000. Yeah, this is true, but now you've seen everything else that I do with my money, you'll see that I am putting aside money for my holidays every month. I'm splitting a lot of expenses with my partner, and I'm setting aside a lot of money to build myself a stable and wealthy future. I also put some of the things in the wants category onto my credit card, and I'll be paying that off next month and keep farming those airline points. If you don't want to do it this way, that's completely fine. But for me, I actually find this fun. Plus, I get a deep sense of security knowing that my finances are well and truly under control and that I'm setting myself up for the future. So that being said, what do I do with this £792? A big chunk of this goes to my 2 gym memberships, £175 to my regular gym where I do classes 3 times a week, and £87 to my climbing gym membership. I allocate £100 to groceries that aren't shared groceries, £100 for going out and eating out respectively because they're different, £75 for my French lessons, and £100 for travel, which covers my Line Pass, which is my main mode of transport, and any other TfL charges. I then have £55 left for other, which will cover anything else that comes up along the way. I will probably actually end up spending more on the going out and eating out section, and I put that spend onto my credit card, as well as gifts and charity donations and things like that. If you've made it this far, you've now seen how I allocate every single pound from my paycheck in March. If you want to use the same budgeting system that I use, I have made it available by popular demand, and as of when this video goes live, it will be on sale for £10 in my Stan store. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching my first ever long-form personal finance video. I do plan to do these videos regularly from now on, so follow along for that. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments and I will answer them.